A big focus, India has responded to US President Donald Trump's threat to increase tariffs on the country for purchasing Russian energy by describing such moves as unjustified and unreasonable, and asserting it would take all necessary steps to protect its national interests and economic security. The response from the External Affairs Ministry came hours after Trump's outburst on social media over India buying massive amounts of Russian oil and selling it on the open market for big profits. Trump contended that he would substantially raise tariffs on India since the matter is linked to the killing of people in Ukraine by Russia. He did not, though, specify the quantum of the levy. But External Affairs Ministry spokesperson Randhir Jaiswal said India had been targeted by the United States and the European Union for importing oil from Russia since the start of the Ukraine conflict. And providing details of the West's continuing trade with Russia, Mr. Jaiswal said, and I quote, "In this background, the targeting of India is unjustified and unreasonable. Like any major economy, India will take all necessary measures to safeguard its national interests." Meanwhile, the Foreign Ministry said that while India's imports are a necessity compelled by the global market situation, the nations criticizing it are themselves indulging in trade with Russia. We have a reaction from Dr. Jaishankar lined up for you. Listen in.
We live in complicated and uncertain times. Our collective desire is to see a fair and representative global order, not one dominated by a few. That quest is often articulated as political or economic rebalance. But I want to say this to you: obtaining respect and ensuring dignity for societies can also be achieved through cultural prowess, especially through cultural prowess. In that context, traditions are of particular value because ultimately they define identity. We must be assured about what we are if we want to be confident about shaping the future. For nations like us, traditions are truly a great source of strength.
My colleague Arjun has been tracking the government's response. He joins us live at the moment. Arjun, take us through the key takeaways as far as the government's official response is concerned.
Well, as you correctly mentioned, India has literally thrown down the gauntlet, not just to Trump, but also the European Union after their unjustified criticism of India purchasing oil from Russia. To put things in perspective here, Parmeshwar, this entire controversy begins once the Ukraine war started, when all the traditional resources were in fact diverted to the European Union, and it was America itself who backed India while purchasing oil from Russia for its national interest, which also happens to be a vital national consumption good. Now, unlike India, which the US and the EU also are criticizing, now both these countries are also still, by the way, purchasing non-vital products still from Moscow. For example, the EU is still purchasing goods like fertilizers, agricultural products, so on and so forth from Moscow. Meanwhile, the US is also purchasing raw materials for its EV batteries, also raw materials for its nuclear programs from Moscow. Now, the Indian statement has clearly underlined this and has stood firm on its point and on its stance of safeguarding India's national interests, and also calling out the Western hypocrisy when it comes to this. Back to you.
Arjun, thanks so much for joining us with that update. Now, to peel back the layers of economic double standards and diplomatic power play, we also have with us economic advisor Willem Buiter. Thank you so much, sir, for joining us on NDTV. Donald Trump has once again turned his attention to India, threatening to slap substantial tariffs over our continued trade with Russia. But the big question at the moment is this really about Ukraine, sir, or is this about economic intimidation and geopolitical muscle flexing?
I think it is both. There's no doubt that the fact that Donald Trump, from being quite favorably disposed towards Russia 6 months ago, to being very disenchanted with Russia and his inability to achieve peace there. So the notion of increasing sanctions on Russia he disapproves of more strongly is valid. He is doing this, and if he can do it directly, he will do so, and if he can do it indirectly,
right,
by imposing tariffs and other sanctions on countries purchasing Russia's valuable exports, he will do so. So that's Ukraine really plays a role here. But undoubtedly, Donald Trump is browbeating the rest of the universe into accepting tariff arrangements which are more favorable to the US.
But is it?
India is just one example of that.
Is it economically feasible or even moral for the United States to impose tariffs on countries like India while they themselves continue to import uranium and LNG from Russia?
Well, both the US and the EU, while they are still importing some goods from Russia, have radically reduced their imports from Russia,
but not stopped.
And are planning to continue to do so. India, on the other hand, has, of course, in a massive way, since the outbreak of the Ukraine conflict in 22, has increased its purchases of Russian oil, other fossil fuels, and military equipment. So there is no symmetry, I think, between India purchasing increased amount of Russian goods and the EU and the US radically reducing their imports of Russian goods.
Well, we'll see how this plays out, sir. Thank you so much for joining us on NDTV. What we're seeing here isn't just oil diplomacy. It's a test of India's strategic autonomy, as many argue, a reminder that economic power often gets weaponized and that behind the talk of rules-based order lie very selective rules.